Hi. Hey, everyone. Well, welcome to Creative Mornings. We are the world's largest face-to-face creative meetup. Who is here for the first time? Nice. A lot of new faces. Oh, okay. Super excited to have everyone here. So, our global sponsor is Adobe. I think everyone knows of them. They provide such an awesome platform for creatives all around the world. And they have this amazing initiative called Level Up. So if you're looking for creative programs to level up in life, they've got you. I will send an email out to everyone afterwards. And I want to thank our local sponsor, C2 Communications, for supporting this from the start. Yeah! And today's theme, punk. So, how many of you had a punk phase in school or when you were young? Awesome. And so that ethos, go back up.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. So, what does punk mean to you? For a lot of people, it's just music, but it means a lot more. And that's the do-it-yourself attitude. That's the anti-establishment attitude. And that translates to what we're doing in life now. And that's where Michael comes in. So Michael started UAE's, or one of UAE's first punk bands, and continues to apply that ethos to his life right now. So we're super excited to have him here today. Thank you. Thanks.
Test. Hello. Hey guys, good morning. I want to thank Gaurav and his team for having me over, inviting me for this talk. This is really cool. Just a heads up, I want to warn you guys ahead of time. 2 months ago, I contracted adult asthma. It came out of nowhere. And what that means is sometimes I have trouble speaking. And every now and then I might have to stop just so I can cough. Don't be alarmed. Doctor said it's normal. After a few months it will disappear. So if ever I have to excuse myself, just give me a few seconds and I'll continue with the talk, okay? Thank you. Cool. So let's get started. The thing with punk music is it's one of those subcultures that people instantly cite or bring up when they want to make an immediate impression about something. Do you know what I mean about that? So if you want to say rebellion, immediately it's punk, right? In the same way that when you say toughness, you think gangster rap. Or when you want to say, anti-religion, you think of black metal, right? It's one of those categories of music that people pull up when they want to make an instant point about something. When they want to say, oh bro, I don't really care about the world, I don't care about politics because I'm all about anarchy and running my own, going through life, following my own rules. You think punk music, you pull it up. It's one of those instant, genres of music that just has a lot of meaning people instantly understand. I'm here to talk about the things that people don't really understand about punk music because there's a lot of things about it that people don't know, right? So let's get started. Didn't know I was covering my press, so can we go to the next slide? Okay, so when you think punk, right, this is probably what you think about instantly. You think about, next slide. You think about the cool haircuts, the mohawks, the piercings, the tattoos. Next slide. You think about really powerful live performances, like from the Sex Pistols, the Clash, and so on. And you think about really gritty, it's a really gritty lifestyle, symbolized by the CBGB Club in St. Mark's in New York, or a lot of places in Europe as well. But what people don't know is punk also represents a lot of things that typically in our world tend to fall under a different bucket. So the Apple guys, they tend to fall under the bucket of innovation and nerds, right? But that's really punk rock too, because that pretty much started in the late 70s as a response to that anti-establishment movement happening around that time, which was you don't have to fall into the mainstream. You could do things your own way. And that philosophy was what inspired a lot of people during that time. Okay, this is a bit pretentious, but I thought I'd bring up this image here. Anyone recognize what this is? Don't worry, if you showed me that picture, I wouldn't have known it either. But this is a Usonian home, which was made by Frank Lloyd Wright. I put it there because back in the 1930s, somebody challenged him and said, you would not be able to build me a home for $30,000. And Frank Lloyd Wright, being the most prominent, most important American architect of that time, said, no, I can beat that challenge. I can build you a home for $30,000 if what you want is a $30,000 house versus I want a $100,000 house, but I only want to pay you $30,000. That's a bit of insight, by the way, that a lot of us in advertising, when dealing with clients, think about a lot, right? I could do good social content for you if you want social content, but don't ask for a TV commercial and then bill me, like make me bill you only for social content. So I bring that up here because it's a very punk rock philosophy. It was like, I can do it. I can beat, I can answer the challenge if the challenge is not a moving target, right? And then there's Quentin Tarantino, who I thought Zara would appreciate this. It was probably the most punk rock reference you can find in the world of film. So out of nowhere, this guy comes in with his own rules, right? Somebody must have told him many times, your editing is a nightmare. People cannot follow the chronology of your storytelling. And he was like, fuck it, let's do it anyway. And then from there, suddenly everybody was like, no, let's do it this way. So he established a new norm in editing and storytelling. And the funny part is a lot of people are so pretentious when they get asked who are your favorite filmmakers. People in film, all right, they tend to name Korean and Japanese filmmakers when they want to say they're into like weird chronology of storytelling. The truth is, it's just Quentin Tarantino, really. He popularized that. And a lot of us just discovered the Japanese and Korean guys after we watched Pulp Fiction, okay? So all of that means punk too. What punk really means is you take a challenge, you take the norm and you challenge it and you do it in your own way and you don't care what people say. Which means if you do that, most of the times you will fail. So punk is really about failure, like a lot of, punk heroes are conventional failures. The ones who we remember as, the ones who made it, there's not a lot of them. But in the world of punk, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you did things your own way, okay? So, yeah, by the way, I didn't mean this. I think there's like a formatting mistake. But it looks really punk rock, so we'll keep going, right? Okay. So you just need to let the principle guide you through life. Ignore what other people say, right? That's what it means. Next one, please. And that is something that I personally grew up with because growing up in the UAE, back in the early 90s to the 2000s, there was really not a lot of things in the country that could catapult you to what you wanted to be. It's not like there were places like this where there's a creative talk, there are no film clubs, there's no music scene, there's no video game scene, there's no sports scene, there's nothing. It's a blank canvas. But from there, a lot of new things started happening in the country that eventually led to UAE becoming what it is now. So if you look at today, 2025, just look at the restaurant scene. All the new pop-ups that are happening, right? So all the new, all the new enterprises that are popping up. You go through certain places of the UAE, you see these Japanese restaurants opened by young entrepreneurs. You can't believe it. All of these things are happening now. All of that started somewhere. All of that started somewhere at a time and place when it suddenly felt like you can actually challenge the norm and get things started. And what's cool about this is that it wasn't all just individuals deciding, you know what, we can do this, let's do something different. There was also an element of punk rock in the government, in them deciding, we're gonna have to support these people. There's a part of Dubai that I really like, which is a lot of people think that, us, the UAE being in the Middle East, being part of the Arab Muslim world, there's a filter that things have to go through before it could be mainstream. And a lot of people think that filter is very cultural. very cultural and very old-fashioned. What you'll realize if you've lived in the UAE long enough is that that's only partly true. A lot of it also has to do with, is this going to lead to success that we might not recognize today as success, but 15 years from now will be the benchmark of success. And the UAE can look forward, they can actually understand this. And that to me is very punk rock, because it's not caring what people say today, because we know, forget the critics, after 15 years, what we do now will lead to better development, right? So I just want to take you through a little bit of the history of punk, just to stay grounded on the topic. Maybe there are a few things here that I think actually everything that I'm about to show you now, you already know, but it's good to lay some background, right? Okay, what year do you think punk rock began? It's okay, it's not a trick question. 40s.
The 70s.
70s? Okay. 40s is pretty early. 70s? Anyone else? In the 60s. Okay. I'll be honest with you, I myself don't know. I only found out last night, I went on Wikipedia. So apparently an American journalist used that term invented that term to describe certain kinds of music in the 60s, right? So in the 60s, the big punk bands that we know now, they all came out of the 70s, which is the Ramones, Sex Pistols, The Clash, so on and so forth, right? What was happening during that time, if you look at the ecosystem of music, which is what eventually led to punk rock being born, was that there was a steady supply of prog music. Prog means progressive. So that's when you have Genesis, you have Pink Floyd, you have bands where the band members are accomplished musicians who know how to play. And that means there's a bit of gatekeeping. You can only be a musician if you're this good, if you can afford these kinds of instruments, and if you hang out with these people. That gatekeeping really pissed off a lot of people, right? Which tends to happen anytime there's a bit of gatekeeping. So the ones who were not allowed into that circle formed their own subculture with an alternative belief system and a different, way of looking at life translated into music, which is, let's not be prog. Prog is all about a very academic approach to playing music. Let's be the opposite. Let's be instant. Everybody knows a guy called Lou Reed. He used to be in the Velvet Underground. He said something really interesting. He said, one guitar chord is fine. 2 chords is savvy. 3 chords, man, that's just jazz. 3 chords is too much. That's his philosophy. So if you look at the Ramones, it's mainly 3 chords. It's always a 1-3-2 pattern, right? You look at the Sex Pistols, The Clash, very simple chord structure. You don't even think about how simple the music is, and we take it for granted. There was a time, guys, when, because of the Beatles, and you can blame their genius. You guys here know the music of the Beatles, right? We were lucky that those 4 people became friends and formed that band. Because the music that those 4 people produced is phenomenal. Phenomenal. If you look at YouTube, look at the structure behind the song Penny Lane. The explanation for how that song is composed. Even Rick Beato, one of the music educators on YouTube, will tell you that this song should not have existed because it's just not natural the way it's been composed. The music genius behind the composition of Penny Lane is so advanced, and yet you take it for granted because when you listen to that song, it's just a nice pop song. That is how deep the music level was in the 60s and 70s. And so when these guys came out, the punk musicians, they threw all of that out of the window. Never mind whether we're using a certain mode. We're going into minors and major fifths, and we're going into ninths. Forget all of that. That's the world of the Beatles. You can play really, really fast? No, that's not us. That's the world of Led Zeppelin. You're very technical, especially with your drums and your bass, your rhythm section. That's not us. That's Led Zeppelin. What are we? We're 3 chords. We play really fast, and we have our middle finger in front of everybody. That's punk. It was a response to what was happening at that time in politics and society. But as always, the best way to have a dipstick of how people are feeling At that point in time, let's always take a look at the pop culture, and that's what punk music was doing. So if you couple that with a changing society of the period, you got a movement that was all about being anti-establishment and being loud about it. Next slide, please. This is where it gets interesting. This is where it led to punk as we know it now. It's that last word in that paragraph, DIY. So if you're going to be all about, if you're going to be very punk about your approach to things, especially with music, what happened was all of these bands wanted to record their music, but they weren't signed to the big major labels, so they couldn't afford the big studios. So that gave rise to what we call DIY recording, do-it-yourself recording, which is fast and cheap. Now, if you do DIY recording, DIY production, what tends to happen is you let people discover that, guess what, I can actually do this very easily. Why don't we make this the norm? It's pretty much what happened in the world of social media and social content. Do you remember the time when people realized, holy shit, with an iPhone, I can pretty much create the entire content of my client for 1 month. So that is what happened with DIY recording in the world of recording, right? And it's just a little bit of an analogy for us to understand what might have been a little revolution in our industry. But what that means is, there's a really profound paragraph over here, it's just being obscured. What that means is if you encourage people to do it yourself, you're giving them the belief that the power of change is in your hands. Well, is that a good transition into that? That's cool, right? I didn't think about that. So you know how Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world? Believe it or not, that is connected to the principles of punk, which is you don't need major labels to record good music, you can do it yourself. And if you can record music yourself, that probably means you can make your own outfits. You can cut your own hair. You can live in your own village that can become a town, become a commune, where you follow your own anarchic rules with your own currency. And that is what created the world of punk as we know it now. It all stemmed from just allowing people to record music themselves, right? So that was the very belief that was being held by myself in 1999. Just to circle back to what's the connection with me, right? So that was me in 1999. I had just entered university. And what's interesting is I was I was in a scholarship program where I had to have a certain GPA. The scholarship was funded by the company my mom worked for. She was working for Pepsi-Cola. So I was under their scholarship program. I just had to do well enough in school and they would pay for half of my fees, right? But all I really wanted to do was play music and play in bands. That's really all I was interested in. And then something unexpected happened, which was my mom got sick. And so she had to leave her job, and because of that, I also lost my scholarship. And so I couldn't go to university anymore. And that sucked, because I couldn't play music, I couldn't play with these bands that I formed. I had to find a way to solve that. So what happened was I found out that Sheikh Mohammed had started this foundation called the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Scholarship Foundation. And that basically gave funding to university students who could score a certain GPA and be in good standing. The only problem was it's only available for Emiratis. So I did something very punk rock, which was let me write him a letter. And that's literally what I did. I really did write a 5-page letter addressed to Sheikh Mohammed that I sent to his executive office. After 2 months, I became the first non-Emirati to get the scholarship program. So, yeah. So that means I could continue rocking. So I was back in university, and if you could play the next slide, please, Gaurav. Have you guys seen this film? It's called Rushmore. Do you remember this? Have you guys seen this? There's the beginning part of this movie, just to give you context, is to show you that this student, the hero of the film, is the worst student in school, grade-wise, but he was in every single club you can think of. He was in the coin club, he was in the debate team, he was in the lacrosse team, he was everywhere, right? Do you guys remember this film? that was pretty much my life in university. I was in every single thing I can think of joining. I was the editor of the school paper, I was the head of the business council, I was the head of the literature club, I was the head of the poetry club, all sorts of things. But I was also part of certain clubs that was very punk rock, and I'll tell you which ones those were. So now that I was okay to go back to university, here's what I ended up doing for the next 4 years. There was a music club at the university. It was just called the AUD Music Club. What I did was I changed the name to the AUD Sound Society. And basically, it was just a music club where people would come with their amplifiers and guitars and play music. What I did was I organized that place to hold concerts. Because the problem was you had a lot of bands, but the bands had no venues to play and no shows to play. So you had to create the concerts. And that was when I went into that path of understanding there's actually a system to organizing a show. Has anyone ever organized a show in Dubai before here? Do you guys have an idea of how hard it is? Okay, Gaurav would know. Guys, let me explain what it's like to organize a show in the UAE, okay? Just very simply. First, it might be a bit different now, but I think the principles are the same. First is you have to make sure that your performers have the authorization to perform. That means you have to be over 18. When you're over 18, you take those passport copies and visas and you give them to the Department of Tourism to allow these performers for one night to perform at that show. Once they have that permit, that show is now authorized to apply for a permit, a different permit just for the show. So you get a permit for the performers, now you need a permit for the show. To get a permit for the show, you need to inform the authorities how many tickets you're printing. And you need to give them a check for 10% of the value of all of those tickets. So if you have a concert for 200, maximum 200 spectators, audience, let's say each ticket is 100, so the full value is 200 times 100, that's 20,000, I think? Yes. So you need to give them a check for 10% of that, that's 2,000 dirhams. Okay, and then once you give them the check, now you have a DET number, now you're authorized to advertise your show. Okay, so you do all of that before you can do a concert properly. And it's different if it's a charity event. That's even more complicated, believe it or not. The 19-year-old me learned all of this back in 2001, and nobody in the music community I was in knew any of this. So when I learned this, I told everybody, I shared the knowledge so they can all organize their own shows. And what it eventually led to was the music community being big enough so that the biggest show, the biggest show that we organized that year, this was in 2001, this was the Media City Amphitheater where Alicia Keys had just performed a few months ago. That place costs 80,000 dirhams to rent for one night. What was very punk rock was to go to the facility management and tell the guy, we're university students, we're from the American University in Dubai, but if you allow us to hold our concert here, we'll make sure that all future events from the university will always cite Dubai Media City as a sponsor, even if it had nothing to do with Dubai Media City. And I can do that because I run the school newspaper. So I could just put their logo in anything that was announced in the school paper. And they let me do it. So we got the venue for free. We didn't pay 80,000 dirham, we got it for free. And we got 5,000 kids to come there and watch bands who are not signed, have no recording, are all underground. So we created our own playground. But that's not enough. So next slide, please, Gaurav. It's not enough you have shows. You also need to have a support system of publication. So in the music community, we have something called zines. Zines are like, fan-made magazines, right? So all of the kids in the music scene who couldn't play an instrument or sing were pretty much were the audience. So we went into those kids and asked them, who among you can take pictures and write articles? Okay, guess what? You're now journalists. So we turned them into the staff of the zines. And they loved it because they suddenly had press passes. They had like VIP access. We can go backstage and hang out with the bands. We're that important. So we created that ecosystem too. And now we needed to penetrate the radio station because if we're playing the shows and there are zines covering us, people just need to hear the music. And guess what, guys? The radio stations were so supportive. When they found out we had recordings and they were good enough, they were more than ready to play it on air. But as a caveat, just a side note on that, it's so interesting. The DJs back then decided what music to play. So this DJ here is Sarah Soar. She decided, you know what, I'm going to play these bands on air. That's cool. What happened a few years later, though, was that the radio stations became syndicated, and suddenly they had to follow a programming, programming. So somebody decides what music they can play, and the DJs no longer had that power. And that's the reason why, if you turn on the radio in the UAE, everything sounds the same, because they basically have the same playlist, right? And so you couldn't get any original band on air anymore, unfortunately. But back in 2002, 2003, we were able to do it. You could listen to local bands, just turn on the radio, and you could hear us, And then we worked with the promoters. So this was really fun. What happened was social media was just starting, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. The promoters didn't know the power of social media yet. They didn't know that if you book the local bands to open for the big bands, the local bands are the ones who make noise on social media. So when they found this out, they booked a lot of local bands to open for the big ones. Among them was us. We ended up opening for Megadeth, Nickelback, and 30 Seconds to Mars. That was pretty fun. Okay, just before you play this, the final thing. Okay, so now you've got the music scene. You have the shows, you have the publication, you have the radio station, and then you have the promoters. The last thing you're missing is promotions and marketing, usually led by your music video. The problem was music videos were typically expensive, right? So we just had to show the community you don't need a good music video to have a music video. In fact, you don't really need a music video. You need content. So this was at the beginning of YouTube. What we did was, instead of shooting a regular music video that used the green screen, we shot a music video that used the green screen, but we decided not to put the special effects. Just let the whole video remain in green screen and let people wonder, is there something wrong with this video? And that becomes our content. I think we can play it now, yeah. Is there audio there? Okay. Yeah. So that was one of our songs from the album. It's called October. We shot that music video and decided not to complete the entire effects thing. And we put it out on YouTube, and people were wondering what happened to the rest of the video. There was a director later on, 15 years down the line, who directed a hip hop video who had a similar idea. Shoot something in green screen or with special effects, but don't put the effects in. We managed to do it 15 years before that. Okay, so what it all taught me, so that was me in my university days, but then you bring that knowledge with you and you apply it to your professional life, and that's what happened next. The key learning was basically be brave enough to be the first to do something. Don't be afraid to suck and do it in your own unique way. You need to be able to have that. The last part is for you. If you do it your own way, you'll feel so happy about what you're doing, you won't care if you're failing or succeeding. And that's why I said before, a lot of punk heroes are actually failures, but they don't care because they're having so much fun, right? Okay, so how did I take that into my professional life? Oh, before that. So I got a job in 2002, I think. That my first job was being a junior writer at Leo Burnett here in Dubai. So, you know what typically happens with junior writers? I pray to God there are no juniors here in this crowd. No juniors, right? A little older? Okay, oh, my daughters are here, so they're definitely going to be facing that soon. So when you enter an ad agency, probably different now. Now it's different. Now we're a little nicer to young people. But back then, young people were just asked to do, let's just say I wasn't a copywriter, I was a coffee writer. I was mainly made to do, to make coffee for the creative department. And if I had enough time after that, then I get to proofread the brochures. And I proofread all of the General Motors brochures. Chevrolet, GMC, Cadillac, yeah. And I also proofread all of the Philip Morris leaflets. And you know how cigarette advertising always has a lot of legal notes? I had to proofread all those legal paragraphs, make sure there are no double spaces, the full stops were just in the right places, and so on. But I really insisted that if I get enough time, they invite me to brainstorm, and they were like, okay, fine, so you've got 20 minutes before your next coffee. Do you want to join us? We've got this brief. It's for this car called the GMC Yukon. It's a 4x4, 582 horsepower. It's the most powerful 4x4 in its class. And the brief was simple. The brief was, make it so that this is the authority of 4x4s. Now go away and think of something. My idea was really simple. There was this cartoon that I saw when I was young, Robin Hood. It's a Disney cartoon. You guys remember it? It's a fox. A fox is Robin Hood, and there's a priest, Friar Tuck, who's a bear. And there's one scene where the two of them are trying to cross a bridge, and neither of them would give way for the other. So they ended up fighting, and they both fell. So I was like, that could be interesting. What if there is a bridge, and there's all these 4x4s, and then what if the GMC Yukon was one of them, and it's coming from the other way? So that led to this. So that was in 2002. Back then, most of the agencies in this part of the world were not winning Cannes awards, right? They would win, regional awards, but not Cannes level stuff. So the only way for them to understand the level of creative impact was to do their own research. So that was done for Leo Burnett when I was working at Leo Burnett. In the same 2 years after that, Impact BBDO conducted their own research to find out the 10 most memorable ads of the last 10 years in the region, with the biggest market being Saudi Arabia. And that ad came up number 1. And that was how they decided to hire me. So that was my next job. Okay, I think we can play this one? Oh, let's skip this one because this is quite depressing. I just typically put it there whenever people ask me for my work. Okay, let's talk about this one here. Okay, just before this. So I get hired by BBDO, and then I move to JWT, and after a few years, I'm back in Leo Burnett. Okay, so I'm back in Leo Burnett, and they had a brief for Do, which was they wanted to target the Filipino community. And naturally, they look at me and they go, "You're Filipino, you should know what to do." and believe it or not, it all started with a TV ad that I did not come up with. That was not my idea. Somebody came up with a TV ad, which was really fun. It's basically, pick-me-up basketball, a couple of Filipinos versus your typical other players that you could find in the basketball court in the UAE. It became a little joke about how the Filipinos are too short to play against the Syrians and the Lebanese, right? That was already done. Somebody came up with that ad. They just asked me to come in and support it and see what I can do to make it richer. So when I saw the storyboard, my suggestion was very simple, which was, you want to target the Filipino community, you got to go to the root of the very thing they love, which is music. You know how we're the karaoke nationality, right? So music is the one thing that they love. So you got to put a fucking good soundtrack on that film, whatever it is. And that became the solution. We found a hip-hop artist who incidentally used to be famous in the Philippines but now lived in Dubai and was an art director at Leo Burnett. So nobody knew this except the Filipino guys he hung out with, picked him up, goes like, "Yeah, guys, this is Alvin. He's been working in the Philip Morris account for over 15 years and none of you knew that he's the Tupac of Manila. He's here in Dubai. Did you guys know this? Let him write the song. Let him do the song for this commercial. But guess what? Let's also make him the hero of the commercial." So we tested it. We tried to see if he could actually act. God damn it, he could act. So that led to this campaign. Yeah.
In the UAE, 89% of the population are expatriates. They work together during the week. Then on the weekend, they all join their respective communities. Except for the Filipinos. Every Filipino belongs to a tropa, and they're together during the weekend and at work, lunch, dinner, when Manny Pacquiao wins, when Manny Pacquiao loses. So Do gave them a product to let them stay close with their friends. And to introduce it, we upheld the number one rule of a tropa, to always stick together no matter what. The campaign began with a film shot at the community's most popular hangout, the Satwa Court. Its soundtrack was specially written for the story, featuring a popular Pinoy hip-hop artist.
Mamaw! Pag nandito na ang tropa, mas masaya magsama-sama. Buo barkada at kahit na makarating pa kami kung saan, ang aming samahan kahit kailang walang iwanan.
It made an immediate impact on the Filipino community in the UAE, which numbers 800,000 people. Pinoys kept requesting for the song. So we gave it to them. But more than that, we also gave them a full-fledged music video. Soon, upcoming DJs were competing for who could make the best remix. The song was even constantly played at malls and retail areas around the country, thanks to Filipino employees who exercised their control of the venue's music system. No wonder it is now one of the most requested songs on the radio.
Isa ay tropa for life.
But the ultimate proof that it became a legit part of Filipino culture, it also became a karaoke hit.
So, yeah, that is a very punk rock campaign. They didn't have any budget for anything. They had a budget for a film, but everything else was done very DIY. So the idea of how can we spread this music across the country, the answer was, guess what? A lot of the shops and restaurants in the UAE are staffed with Filipinos, and they're in charge of the sound system. All we need to do is reach them, bribe them so that they play our songs, and suddenly wherever you go in the UAE, whether you're at the petrol station, or whether you Weston Supermarket, Love Supermarket, Bergman, Dubai Mall, Mall of the Emirates, wherever you go, you're hearing this fucking song. And all we needed to do was bribe the Filipino staff with prepaid cards from Dude. So that is very punk rock, you know, like that kind of DIY thinking, very grassroots. Okay, I'm gonna skip this one because it's a, well, you know what, I'll give you a little glimpse of this. I'll tell you what's punk rock about this. This is after Burnett. I was working with a company called Webedia. This is where I met Motaz. That's where our friendship began, and Motaz is such a lovely guy, by the way. He's the one who decided to invite me for this talk, guys. So that's the reason I'm here today. So, anyway, very quick one. I think Zara will appreciate the backstory here because this is a typical client nightmare. Riyadh season is a KSA. Okay, it's Riyadh season is an event, and the General Entertainment Authority of Saudi Arabia are in charge of this brand. And typically, these briefs are huge. They have like a lot of money, but they're very ambitious. They typically have an objective of, oh, we want to get the whole of Hollywood talking about us. Oh, we want to get the entire, Asia Pacific talking about us. They have very ambitious objectives. The objective for this year was we want the entire entertainment world to talk about us. So we're going to get Leonardo DiCaprio, we're going to get Beyonce, we're going to get The Undertaker. We're going to get all sorts of stars. Who else did they have? DJ Khaled. We're going to get a lot of A-list celebrities to star in the film. And guess what? We're going to make sure that the agency who comes up with the idea is also world class. They hired me to lead that pitch, not to be a creative, to lead that pitch. So I reached out to different agencies who are not yet in this region to pitch for this project and help the client pick the best work. So I partner with my ex-boss Seyong to find agencies who are not yet here. We found that there's a network called MDC. They have Crispin Porter, they have 72 and Sunny, and so on. So we spoke with them, they got involved in the pitch, 3 of their agencies submitted work. In the end, we picked out the work. 2 months before the launch date, everything was good to go. All the Americans needed, the winning agency, all they needed now was for the Saudis to connect them with the celebrities who during this entire time, the Saudis were assuring us that they were working the contract with. The Beyoncés, Leonardo DiCaprios, and so on. 2 months. 1 month passes, nothing, and they're starting to panic. Guys, we really need to get in touch with the celebrities. If not, can you put us in touch with the doubles? Because at least the doubles, we need to brief on how Leonardo DiCaprio probably looks like right now. His hairstyle, his physique, and so on. Another 2 weeks pass, nothing. So now we're 2 weeks from the launch date. That's when the client came clean and admitted that they actually had not worked out the contracts. But guess what? We're trying to work out this thing with Paris Saint-Germain and Lionel Messi. But the script is not for that. We're 2 weeks away from the shoot. So Manu from Deja Vu was freaking out. So what do we do? Well, obviously, can we kind of find a way to make this storyline that you have with Leonardo DiCaprio and Beyonce work with Lionel Messi and these guys? Okay, sure, it could be done. We just need to shoot Messi for a day in Paris and the team for like maybe a day in, another day in Paris. Oh, we cannot do that. What? Why? You only have Leo Messi for 2 hours. And you have the Paris Saint-Germain team for 20 minutes. So how are you going to do this? So you're going to see Messi for like 1 second and that's it? Yeah. No agency, 72 and Sunny, obviously we're like, fuck you guys. I don't know how you do things in that part of the world, but we're out of here. So no more agency, just Manu in the production, and there was me, and everybody turns to me and goes, what do you suggest we do? And then I said, well, you need a script. Okay, we only have Messi for 2 hours for the shoot. What can you do? And so I came up with a script. So I put my creative hat back on and I wrote the script. And the script was based out of that, it was born out of that challenge. You only have the main cast for 2 hours. Eventually he extended, so we had it for 4 hours. But you had it for a limited time. So that means you're only going to see him for a glimpse and then he's going to disappear. A glimpse and he's going to disappear. And that basically became the basis of this commercial.
يابا يابا شوف يما شوفي ليو ميسي هذا ميسي ميسي هنا يابا ليو ميسي يابا شوف يابا شوف
Novel.
Ready?
Yes! يابا شوفوا
There was an end line there. I think this version didn't have that line, but there was a line in the end that said, at the Riyadh season, we don't just ask you to imagine. That line you hear, and then that's when the door opens and the kid sees the entire PSG team, and the line continues, we ask you to imagine more. So at Riyadh season, we don't just ask you to imagine, we ask you to imagine more, then imagine more. But they didn't put that line in the end, I don't know why. Okay, so that takes us to today. So I thought, you know what, I've been pretty much my entire career just following my own rules. I'm not really good with, having bosses. Why don't I just form my own company? So that's where I am today. I decided to leave the industry or leave employment altogether. I now have my own firm. It's called Sputnik. We do long-form entertainment. We typically specialize in storytelling. So what that means is we will create series, episodes, long-form storytelling for brands. But we also do your typical brand work. Sometimes we'll do a commercial, sometimes we'll do a 20-second brand content. But what we do is we maintain that very punk rock DIY philosophy. And we're all from the agency side here, so I can tell you this. The secret to that really is cost. A lot of things in production cost a lot of money because they were priced 20 years ago. But if you really reevaluate how much they cost now, they're significantly lower. So what we typically do is we come up with the kind of thinking that network agencies would have, but the production value would be the same, but the way you operate it based on the logistics and what you book and the resources that you charge them for are very smartly done, very efficient, so it's very affordable. So that is how we compete in the market, essentially. And I'll skip this. This is like the making of one of the commercials we did. I'll show you this last one instead. Oh, just before that. So this piece of work is something that we did for TBWA. It was shortlisted at Cannes a few days ago. Now I can tell you that it didn't convert. But it was the first time that my company's work was ever shortlisted for a Cannes Lion. That was a pretty big deal for me. So I'll play this one.
Being a woman starting up a business is not easy.
The UAE is thriving, yet women make up just 18% of entrepreneurs.
Finding impact investment is quite difficult, especially for women-founded startups.
Banks are not ready to invest in us. Being a small-time entrepreneur, I can't apply for auto loan.
I had to rely on my own car for a lot of the transportation.
We at Nissan and Arabian Automobiles took a bold step, evolving from a seller of vans to an investor with vans. Presenting our Ventures, a revolutionary program that fuels the success of women-led startups. No credit score, no debt, just potential. Instead of traditional funding, we invested Nissan Irvins in promising startups for a minimal stake in their future equity, a small ownership share based on the future worth of the business. Entrepreneurs were selected based on 3 factors: potential for growth, societal impact, need for a van in their core business. As the startups thrive, we grow with them. We use digital and social media to invite women entrepreneurs. They registered their interest at urventures.capital.
A partnership program unlike anything in the country.
CreativeVentures is empowering underdogs to go up against corporate and tech giants.
Over 30 women-led ventures are now part of the program. We've seen a surge in inquiries from women-led entrepreneurs. B2B acquisition has doubled since launch. Revenue is projected to grow by 30% in the future, helping even more women-led startups thrive. This program isn't just a success story. It's a driver of real change.
Every time our van is roaming around with our logo, it's a dream come true.
Ventures, pay with your potential.
Yeah. What's nice about that case study was you didn't hear the line, so we created the world's first. Every case video, the world's first. So that's what my company does. My first company. I have a second company that as of a week ago is finally officially launched. It took me 3 years. It's a bicycle company. It basically makes road bikes for the masses. So the insight here is if you want to get into road bikes, you know, the racing bikes typically you find in Tour de France, that's a very expensive hobby. Those bikes typically cost 24,000 dirhams and above, okay? The alternative are very affordable bikes that are made in the Far East, but nobody rides those because they're just too cheap and there's no credibility. So my insight was we can learn something from the car industry. 15 years ago, you would not get any Lebanese guy to buy a BYD. And now I think most of these jet tours are owned by Lebanese guys. So it's a perception problem. There's something wrong with how Chinese vehicles are being perceived. If they can change perception in the car industry, I think they can change perception in the bicycle industry. So essentially what Narbikes is we found the best producers of bike frames in the Far East, and we gave it an image. And the image is NAR. NAR stands for fire. NAR stands for endurance and being able to withstand the challenges of life, because these are products not for the winners of races, but for the winners of life. It's the Filipino guys who have a job at Starbucks who wants to wake up at 5 a.m. just so he can ride his bike for 1 hour. It's for my Indian creative director friend who was told that he has a debilitating disease and he could never ride again, but he decided, fuck it, I'm going to start cycling anyway. And now he's been riding for 4 years and he's doing really well. It's for all of the people we know who are everyday guys and they just want to take up cycling as a way to make their lives better. So it's for the masses. So suddenly it's no longer for guys who can afford only the really expensive bikes, who are the same people you find on the golf course. Now we want to create these bikes and give it to people to democratize cycling. But you're not going to do that by just having cool products. We all know that, right? I think we can all learn something from Marlboro Country. You need to create the image. And so we did. we put our bikes in the hands of athletes. So I sent them to Europe. I sent them to an Italian cyclist who's the world gold medalist in the military Olympics. And if you ask me how I got a hold of this guy, I went through my phone list, tried to look for any friend I have who is Italian, found one. His name is Leonardo Maggiore. How do I know him? He was a creative director at Leo Burnett many years ago and left and went back to Europe. I contacted him out of the blue, told him about the idea, and he was like, guess what? Today's your lucky day. My entire family are in cycling. And he was like, my cousin is a gold medalist. And I was like, can you give my bike to him, help me promote my bike, and I'll make you a partner of NAR. So now he's a partner in my company. So he gave it to his cousin. His cousin loved it so much that he dropped his sponsorship with Bianchi, which is the oldest bike brand in the world, to ride NAR. He loves it that much. Yeah, no kidding, guys. And then we gave it to the very first Emirati Ironman, who's actually an Iron woman. She's the very first one to complete the course. Her name is Hannah Nabosi. She rides NAR. And we gave it to a 13-year-old girl who the head of the UAE Triathlon Society went on Dubai Eye and said, this girl is the future of UAE Triathlon. She actually approached us. Her parents approached us, said that we found out about this NAR bike that Hannah Nabosi, the previous girl, keeps talking about. Can you build one for our daughter? And so we did. So we gave her the very first model of NAR that is all internal. So that's the newest model. All internal means there are no exposed cables. If you go to the next slide, please, Sora. That's her with her bike. That bike was built specially for her. Yeah. You go to the next one. This is what I mean. All internal. No exposed cables. It's also not mechanical. It's now a Bluetooth DIY system. So when she changes gears, her opponent will not sense her about to change gear and hence anticipate her move because she can keep her motions discreet. It's all Bluetooth. It's the standard in Tour de France, but it's very expensive. However, we managed to drop the price to a point where it is affordable. The cheapest international bike that has those features, that has this quality, is around 28,000 dirhams. This model is available for 12,000 dirhams from NAR. So it's almost half the price. And that's what I mean by punk rock, guys. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Sir.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I think we have time for 3 questions. So if anyone...
To one question, it said, "Will Alvin rediscovering his joy for rapping?"
Yeah.
He's still not director.
No. After that campaign, Alvin came up to me and said, dude, you won't believe this. I went to KFC, they recognized me, and they gave me free chicken. He's still an art director. But because of that, he decided to take his hip-hop thing more seriously in the UAE. So he formed his own hip-hop collective, and they have a rap battle every Thursday in a club in Dera. I'll give the link to Gaurav and Mo. Share with you guys. You should watch it. Have you guys ever seen a Filipino rap battle? It's hilarious because our language always ends with the same vowels, so it's easy to create a rap verse. And so it's so easy to do it, so you can watch guys just take on each other. They don't need to be geniuses. They'll just insult the shit out of each other. And you're just watching these 2 40-year-old Filipino guys go at it non-stop. It's so entertaining. I'll give the link to you guys. You should come and watch them sometimes.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I don't have a... Okay.
I don't have a question for Michael, but a lot of what you've said, Michael, you hear about these philosophies of these agencies, but everything that you said about what punk rock stood for is a freaking, all the fundamentals are the mission statements or the ethos of these agencies. So thank you for kind of collectively summarizing. Yeah,
it's rebellion.
It's rebellion. And I think a lot of what you're hearing now across the industry and all these TED Talks and all these seminars is what you've really beautifully captured through your presentation. So really, thank you. Really, thank you.
Thank you. What he said. Anyone else?
Hi. You talked about obviously doing things outside of the norm that people were usually exposed to seeing back in those days, and how that kind of carried forward with you with, the way you brought your companies to life. How would you have overcome any demotivating circumstances, for example, that would happen, or if someone could tell you, why are you doing what you're doing? There's a better way or there's a faster way, rather than breaking that norm. How would you kind of overcome those situations, or what would you do to kind of keep yourself moving when it came to that? Oh, I think that's my question.
Cool. That's a super cool question. That's a super cool question, and I'll be honest with you, it's something that I only really thought about later in life, when I was in a position to decide the fate of people because I control their salaries, which means that it's high risk. You really need to think carefully about your decisions. And there was this podcast, or there was this interview that I was listening to, talking about, I think the topic was what makes a good dickhead versus a bad dickhead. Or it might have been asshole. I'm sorry, I'm cursing. It's the same set of it. And they compared Steve Jobs with Elon Musk. And they said the difference is that Steve Jobs was challengeable. If you had a good point, you can challenge him, and he will listen.
Yeah.
So I said, I want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy who doesn't listen, because if you don't listen, the glory is all yours if you win. But it's too high risk. I don't want to be the person who's responsible for my people not being able to enroll their kids in school. So I listen. So I think to answer your question, you need to be really determined about what you want to do. And you also want to set a standard so that your guys don't just come up to you with idiot questions all the time. You need to be very strict and high quality in your everyday performance so that they know they cannot waste your time. But you also make it clear to them you can't be challenged. So if they tell you, Mike, please do not shoot because I think it's gonna rain. Please don't take that job with Nissan. I think it's gonna rain because we're kind of feeling the moisture in the air, and you're like, yeah, but we need to shoot because I need that money to fund this other job. But you know it's gonna rain. So what do? Sometimes you have to listen to your people. That's what I ended up doing. I listened to them. So last year, when that big Noah's flood happened in the UAE, we were not shooting that day. We were supposed to. So we ended up shooting a week after that. We kept the job. I listened to my team, a combination of the location manager, the logistics, so on and so forth. And I made the right decision. And if I did not make the right decision, if I had taken the job and that whole production was booked, I would have wasted 120,000 dirhams. So for a small company, that means that's 120,000 dirhams that's not going into the pockets of my people. And that would have been disastrous. So I managed to escape that problem.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Like, you were incredible. Thank you everyone for coming. We'll see everyone next month. The theme is mentor. So let's see what we do with that.